Before we get to today's episode, we want to remind listeners to send us your spooky stories for our annual Halloween Listener Stories episode. These can be any type of paranormal or other creepy experience that you were able to debunk or that you can't explain and you'd like us to take a stab at. You can send them to spookysciencesisters@gmail.com or DM them to one of our social media accounts. Please submit your story no later than October 18th, and we hope you're enjoying the beginning of spooky season. So it's like, well, maybe someone's just seeing that. And they're like, oh, it's a ghost ship. But
it's a ghost ship. It must be, because it looks old.
Like, I don't see, like, classic cars driving around. I'm like, oh, it's a ghost car. But, you know.
Maybe you should. I'm Paige.
And I'm Megan.
And this is Spooky Science Sisters. Hello, you're listening to Spooky Science Sisters, a podcast where we present to you a science-based and probably very giggly discussion on all things strange and unusual.
In this episode, we are going to be talking about spooky oceans before we get to our discussion. It's time for something spooky. So, Paige, did anything spooky happen to you in the last 2 weeks?
Nope. Nothing.
Great.
Nothing spooky. What about you?
Nothing spooky specific happened to me, but I do have a something spooky this week, which I guess is something spooky for both of us, because I feel like this is just scary for all people who will now know this knowledge.
Yep, true.
So by this point, this will be like many months ago, but last month in June, or it may have been late May, but we're recording this in July. So happy October, everyone. We're back in July. But anyway, for us, it was just a few weeks ago. For you, it's 6 months ago. And there was this lobster diver in Connecticut in Connecticut? No, it's Massachusetts.
Massachusetts.
Good thing I did zero research. Anyway, so this guy's a lobster diver. He's off the coast of Cape Cod, and a freaking humpback whale tried to swallow him. And
wait, tried? I thought it did.
So, okay, it depends on like what you define as swallowed, right? Because like it don't be a perv.
No, I was just thinking like, I thought, does it? Because I feel like there's only one way to swallow something.
Yeah, so like, I would say like if you swallow something, it like goes down your throat. But like, he was just in the whale's mouth.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah, so here's what I learned after looking into this. So the story is like sort of horrifying, because he talks about like the whale, which humpback whales eat like shrimp, and they have baleen. They don't have teeth. So they filter out water so they can eat shrimp. And it's just like, the story is just sort of horrifying, because this guy's diving for lobsters and then he ends up in a humpback whale's mouth, which is like, I didn't know that this was a thing that happened. But if you look into it, like humpback whales, their actual throat is only like the width of like a dinner plate. So he wasn't going to actually like fit down its throat.
Gotcha.
He was just in its mouth.
He's just hanging out in his mouth.
Yes. And so it's just like an accidental thing. He happened to be in the way of the whale while it was scooping up this big, scooping up water and whatever it was eating. And he got caught in there. But it's like, even that is terrifying. But I guess like the whale immediately realized like, oh, something's in there that should not be, and like started thrashing its head around, and he got spit out back at the surface. So that's great for him. But
that's great for him.
I feel like I'm afraid of whales now.
Yeah. So my question is like, how frequently has this happened? Or is this like a one-time deal?
So it's exceptionally rare. So I did look into this more, because I was like,
that does mean it happened. It's happened before.
Yes. Yeah. But it is worrisome that it has happened before. So there was a few years ago, a pair of girls who were in a kayak, and there's video of this one. The whale comes up from beneath them and flips the kayak over, and like they almost get in its mouth. So terrifying. And then there's another one where I think the guy was off the coast of South Africa, but there's a photo of that one where it's like this diver who's like, all you see is like his butt and legs hanging out of the whale's mouth. So it is an exceptionally rare event. I mean, I think like the only people that, you know, it's happened to in however many years have survived because it's just an accident. But it is a thing that happens. And I was like, I've been kayaking around whales before. Like, I didn't know I had to worry about them accidentally trying to swallow me. That's awful. So
didn't
anyway,
didn't the guy like describe how it felt to be in its mouth?
Yes. Yeah. He says that, like, he could feel the whale squeezing with the muscles in his mouth. So it's not great. And I think like initially he thought that a great white shark was trying to attack him. And then he realized that it was a whale when obviously he didn't feel any teeth. But yeah.
Crazy.
I don't love it. I didn't know it was a thing that I have to worry about. And now it's like, great. Now I have another thing to worry about in the ocean. On top of all the other things that we're about to talk about.
Right. As if it wasn't already scary enough.
So anyway, we can get to spooky oceans. Some of this is some specifics and some of this is sort of some like existential dread about the depth and size and how little we know about the ocean. But Paige, you are going to get us started, so go ahead.
All right. So as Megan already mentioned, the ocean is this very spooky place for a lot of reasons. But if you know, one big reason is because we know so little about it. Over 80% of the ocean is unmapped, unobserved, or unexplored, which is kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
And it's because it's difficult and expensive, and the ocean is just so big. The average depth of the ocean is about 4,000 meters or 13,100. 13,100?
13,100. That sounds right.
13,100 feet. 13,000 feet. And the deepest place on Earth in the Mariana Trench is known as Challenger Deep and is greater than 11,000 meters or 36,000 feet deep. And to put that in perspective, you could put the entire height of Mount Everest down there and you would still have 8,000 feet left or a little under 1.5 miles. So it is very, very deep.
And like even 13,000 feet as the average depth, like that's a lot. Like we make a big deal in the continental US about people like, for example, summiting all of the 14,000 foot peaks. Like mountain peaks.
Right.
And it's like, and for the ocean, it's like, that's just like a standard ocean depth.
I don't even like swimming in anything that's more than like 12 feet deep.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll do it, but I don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm weird about it. I'm a great swimmer. You know, I was on swim team for a lot of years. I love to be in the water. And I like love things like snorkeling and stuff like that. I think I would really love scuba diving. But what I don't love is like being in water where I can't see what's beneath me.
Yeah, right.
Like it's deep enough that I can't see what's under there. That really freaks me out. So I'm sure there's, I don't know, some little lizard brain thing that explains why that is. But it makes me very uncomfortable. And I think I used to be braver and then I started freaking myself out about it. Okay, so not only is the ocean scary big, but it's also dangerous, which, you know, duh. There are an estimated 3 million shipwrecks across all of the oceans on the planet, some of which are thousands of years old, which is pretty cool. So according to a 2016 article in Popular Mechanics, less than 10% of all located shipwrecks, so the ones that we know about, have been surveyed or visited by divers. And that only accounts for about 1% of this, 3 million total shipwrecks in the world. So there are a lot of shipwrecks and presumably a lot of people who, have perished because of these ships sinking. So, of course, this sparks a lot of ghost stories. And we have talked about the graveyard of the Pacific before. There's also the graveyard of the Atlantic. So these are both along particularly dangerous stretches of coastlines. And there are plenty of stories of ghostly ships. And I think in those areas, the knowledge of there being a particularly large number of shipwrecks is obviously going to prime people to interpret strange things they see as ghost or ghost ships. But like there are ways that you can explain ghost ship sightings. So, yay.
Yeah. So I have I have the ghost ship story time.
Yay!
So ghost ships can be defined as one of two things. And I think a lot of people, think of them as like paranormal, like ghostly ships, like, ghost ships. But, but they can also be defined as a ship that has like no living crew on board. And so I am going to talk about both. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is the SS Orang Medan, which took place in the 1940s. And depending on what source you look at, it's different years, but it's always going to be in the 40s at some point. Mm-hmm. And it is a Dutch vessel that was traveling through the Strait of Malacca. And as it passed through the strait, several ships from the surrounding area received the following distress call. All officers, including captain, dead, lying in chart room and on bridge, probably whole crew dead. Followed by some jumbled Morse code and a final message from the operator, I die.
What?
Rescuers made their way to the ship, and as they made their way on board, they find that the ship is exactly as it was described. The entire crew is dead, including their pet dog, which is very sad. And everybody who's on the ship has this horrified look on their face. So they're all dead, and they said that their faces are twisted in this weird, frightened look, as if in their final moments they had to fight something off. However, what's strange about it is there's no obvious injuries to any of the bodies, nor is the ship damaged.
Wait, there's no injuries?
No, they don't see any obvious injuries to the bodies.
I've never heard of this. This is some X-Files shit.
So do you remember the game that came out that was the same people who made the one that we all played together where you're trying to save the people and it's a cinematic?
Oh, Until Dawn?
Yeah. The Man of Medan game that came out?
Yeah.
That the story starts with this ship. And I didn't even realize it until I was reading about this. I was I'm pretty sure that's the same as the game that I played, and it absolutely is.
Medan, it's referring to the Orang Medan ship. That is...
Yeah.
Okay, well, now I definitely need to play that game.
Yeah.
I've never heard of this.
I really hadn't either.
Yeah. And also, just circling back for a second, when I was thinking ghost ships, I 100% always just think the ship is a ghost, right? The ship is an apparition. I totally forgot about ships where everybody is dead or everybody has disappeared as a thing.
Or the movie Ghost Ship. Have you seen it?
Yes. It's
okay.
Terrible.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Oh, so I haven't seen it as an adult, but I loved that movie when I was younger. It's okay. Probably bad.
It's terrible, but it's still fun to watch. It's one of those horror movies. There's just a lot of it that's very cheesy. So
yeah, the very beginning scene. Anyway, sorry.
Anyway, though, I sort of forgot that is an option when it comes to ghost ships. And I'm gonna be honest, I think that's 100% scarier than a ship that's an apparition.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Which is why so this story kind of ends weird, but I wanted to cover it because of that reason. So
Yeah.
Anyways, there are also reports, and these, differ depending as well on the source. But basically, the rescuers show up, they see the dead bodies. They do make mention that the person who had made that distress call, is still there and, just barely made it out. Out of that area. And so they think that the part of the call that came through that was jumbled and they couldn't quite decipher was them just struggling to survive, which is scary. And so as the rescuers are there, they, like I said, this differs a little bit, but some sources say that they are still on the ship. Others say that they are about ready, getting off the ship, and they're going to tow the boat back. But as they're doing this, the boat catches fire and ends up exploding.
Oh.
So as it goes with these things, there aren't any real records of these events. There's no real, it sounds like even tracking the ship itself is tough.
Are there records of the ship even existing?
So it sounds like the ship existed. The whole story itself and where it was and all that seems like it's a little up in the air, or there's no real record of a lot of that. And the first time this story comes forward is in the early 50s in a newspaper, I think. And it's eyewitness account. It's people who, who were there that day, who were there rescuing. But other than that, there's really nothing there. So a lot of people think it's a fake. A lot of people think it's just some, urban legend or whatever. But a lot of people still believe that this happened. And so if it did, there are some explanations, and I've only covered 2 of them because there's several, but there are some explanations as to what could have happened. The first one that a lot of people throw around is that it could have been a pirate attack, which, good explanation. The only thing that I think a lot of people don't buy with that is that it doesn't really explain the lack of injury to the bodies or really to the ship. And you'd expect some sort of damage somewhere, and you don't really see that.
Yeah. Okay.
The one that I got excited about is that according to some sources, there were reports that the ship may have been carrying nitroglycerin and potassium cyanide.
Oh.
And so nitroglycerin is an explosive, and it's one of the main ingredients in dynamite. So that could explain the ship exploding. And then potassium cyanide is water reactive, and it can produce a highly toxic and highly flammable hydrogen cyanide gas. So in, a situation where it did come in contact with water, it could just have been a poisonous gas that was basically just killing them off. And so a lot of people kind of tend to lean towards this as being the explanation because it would explain the death of the crew members. It would explain why the explosion occurred. And it could also, they say, explain why there was no record of the event because carrying these types of combustibles over a rough sea was frowned upon. So yeah, that is the Orang Medan story, which I just thought was cool.
Yeah. Super creepy.
Super creepy.
There's several aspects of that. Yeah, that sort of just sound made up for the sake of the story being good. Right. And the fact that, there's no concrete evidence that even, any really of this happened.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my thing is I don't know. I could see them coming on the ship and, finding the dead bodies, but the descriptions of the bodies and the way the faces looked and stuff could be slightly exaggerated. Yeah. And maybe not even just for the sake of storytelling, but just it was probably kind of scary if it happened.
Maybe it was a conspiracy and the company who owned the ship killed them all off for some reason and then made it look like it was some mysterious accident.
Well, we all know that's an explanation. There's also I think there's also an alien. I didn't even touch that, because it's where there's some sort of weirdness or paranormal something, there's always aliens. So I just didn't even touch that one. Right. The other story that I was going to touch on is the Flying Dutchman story. Are you familiar with it at all?
Yes.
Okay. So it's a myth that comes from the 17th century. And in the most well-known story, the captain, who's Captain Van Decken, who's referred to now as the Flying Dutchman. So the Flying Dutchman refers to the captain, not necessarily the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had to note that, like, basically the whole time I was looking at this, all I could think about was SpongeBob.
Why?
Because the Flying Dutchman is a recurring character on SpongeBob.
Great.
And, like, when they had, like, the big marathons, he would be the one that they would, like, he would be like, welcome back to SpongeBob. So anyways,
Great.
Yeah, great. That's where my mind goes. So our Flying Dutchman, he was on a voyage and planned to establish a settlement near the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. And as his vessel started around the Cape, a really bad storm hit, and the ship was at risk of capsizing. So his crew, as you know, most people would, wanted him to turn around and return to safety. But he insisted that they push through, and he swore that the ship would succeed even if he had to sail until Judgment Day. So the story goes that he was then condemned to sea forever. And his the ship did capsize. And so now he is just out there sailing around in his ghost ship. And there have been sightings of said ghost ship for more than 2 centuries. And the sightings have ranged from everything from seeing a ship through like fog and rough waters to seeing a ship making headway through calm waters. So like people claim to see it in, all different scenarios, all different weathers, situations. And the Dutchman is known as the harbinger of death because apparently seeing the ship or, opening a letter describing a sighting of a ship has resulted in the destruction of other ships.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I know. Like you see the ship and then
your ship sinks.
And then, it's like a bad omen for your own ship. So,
right.
Classic ghost ship myth. I guess worth pointing out that, not a surprise that his ship sank off the coast of South Africa because I think it's in that area where you get some of the biggest waves in the world. So it's a dangerous place to sail. Well, and it probably lends to the legend because if it comes from that area and it's where you get some of the biggest waves in all of the world's oceans, then there's gonna be a higher proportion of shipwrecks. And especially, a long time ago, sailors were pretty superstitious. So I could see it sort of like it becomes a self-perpetuating thing,
Right.
So for these more like ghostly apparition ghost ships where it's actually like the ship itself is sort of the ghost, there are some scientific explanations. So you can get some weird optical illusions that happen with the horizon in a body of water. One of these is called the Fata Morgana, which is a type of mirage that is due to a thermal inversion that distorts light waves and causes an optical illusion where it appears that a ship, and meaning like a real, regular, physical, exists in the world ship, is floating above the horizon and is distorted. So it would like look a little, wavy and like miragey, like desert miragey that you see in the movies. The real ship would be just below the horizon or behind a flat piece of land. So, you see like a floating ship out there, you're going to be like, oh, it's a ghost ship. But it's not. It's just an optical illusion. That's fine. There are also little bioluminescent bugs that live near the ocean's surface. And by bugs, I mean bacteria.
Bugs.
Bugs. I don't know. I'm in a weird mood. But they are algae or bacteria? Algae that luminesce. They light up when they get disturbed. And it's super awesome to see.
I know. It's like the coolest thing.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's very cool. Like look up videos. If you ever go to Puerto Rico, go to the bioluminescent bay and you can go like splash around, which is really awesome. But they glow like this like greenish bluish color. So I could see if you saw that in the water, you'd think like, oh, there's a ghost ship underneath me, or like, you know, there's a ghost ship out in the distance, like wherever they were disturbed. So that could be a source. You know, maybe ignition of some sort of like flammable gas at the ocean's surface, but I'm like unclear what that would be or where it would be coming from. So, but that was one of the possible answers for seeing a ghost ship. I guess if there was like an oil spill or something like that and it ignited. But yeah, again, I feel like people would know, like, oh, that's
not a ghost ship.
Yeah, but what do I know?
I wonder, like, how frequently ghost ships are reported today.
I don't know. I guess I didn't look at any statistics on, you know, ghost ship sightings right now. I would bet it's a lot less than it used to be, because now we have radar, so you can detect nearby vessels. So if you saw a ship and there was like one of these optical illusions at work that like made it look weird or strange, or, you know, made you suspicious of it, you could just like check the radar and be like, oh, there's a real ship there. Or you could like hail them on the radio or something, you know?
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Probably not many today. This is probably an older thing. But I don't know. I think people still see them off the coast. Like, there are reports of seeing like really old-fashioned ships and stuff.
Yeah.
But, I mean, even those, it's like, okay, well, they have, like, Chicago has, like, the one that looks like, you know, a ship from the, I don't know, 18th, maybe 19th century that you can just pay to go on a ride on. So it's like, well, maybe someone's just seeing that. And they're like, oh, it's a ghost ship. But
it's a ghost ship. It must be, because it looks old.
Yeah. Like, I don't see, like, classic cars driving around. I'm like, oh, it's a ghost car. But, you know.
Maybe you should.
Well, that's ghost ships. And one reason why the ocean is spooky. The ocean is also spooky because there are both real and imagined monsters there. So Paige is going to tell us a little about that.
Yeah. So tales of sea monsters used to be much more prevalent when much more of the earth was unexplored. And I like your note here. Unexplored by, at least by white people.
It's not wrong. Like, there are stories of, like, you know, like Pacific Islanders sailing around for like thousands of years.
Right.
And going it's really far too.
It's so frustrating when people say things like that. Like, oh, well, back when the earth wasn't explored. It's like, well, it was. Just not.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely places where, like, you know, maybe white people were the first people there. But yeah, that happens all the time. People will be like, oh, it was unexplored. And it's like, no, you mean unexplored by Europeans. So, anyway.
So, cartographers were trying to draw actual representations of sea life according to the scientific books of the time. And from a Smithsonian...
I think you skipped the fact that this is talking about the fact that there are sea monsters on maps. So this is thinking about, like, the old maps that you see with, like, weird sea monsters and stuff on them.
Right. From a Smithsonian magazine article... There was a belief going on back to the 1st century and Pliny the Elder that all land animals had an equivalent in the ocean. And I kind of love this idea. Like, there are sea dogs, sea pigs, sea cats. In medieval times, the sea life depicted on maps were often hybrids of fish and land animals. There were also drawings of actual sea creatures that were depicted as monsters. For example, whales with beast-like heads attacking ships. But this can probably be explained away by sailors' fear of the unknown. Like, to them, a whale breaching could be interpreted as readying for attack, which, like, after hearing the story of the lobster...
That's true. Maybe someone got
lobster guy, like, maybe they did get attacked by a whale.
And it was like, it's a sea monster. But yeah, maybe that actually happened.
Right.
So I love this because I had always looked back at... I'd always thought it was, you know, strange to look at old maps from hundreds of years ago, and there's all this weird stuff on there. Like, why does everything look like monsters? And like sometimes they actually were drawing like sea serpents and stuff. And I guess some of this was a way to just represent uncharted areas. So a lot of the ones that you see that are decorated with these drawings, it's not like the map maker was saying like, oh, there's monsters here. It's like they just needed something to put on the map because they didn't know what was there. And actual maps that would have been used on ships like wouldn't have had these decorative elements on them. Like this was more like maps that people would hang in their homes that you see them on, I guess.
And they're really cool.
They are really cool. They're really pretty. And yeah, like some of them, like I've seen ones where it's like half horse, half fish, or like, yeah, the lion with like the fish tail. It's a really weird one. The whales look really weird. And I think a lot of the information that was being used to write about these creatures, so as Paige mentioned, the people drawing these are working from scientific books of the time. But the people that are collecting this information from out in the world and telling them about it are, you know, probably uneducated, probably pretty superstitious sailors. And like Brian Regal, when we had him on the podcast, like it's very possible that they were like thinking that whales having sex were sea serpents. Right. So like they're misinterpreting normal things. And I also wouldn't rule out, you know, things like they might have been like dehydrated, like suffering from like malnutrition or some sort of disease. And like that's why they're just like seeing weird shit while they're out in the middle of the ocean on these long sea journeys. I also think that it becomes a story sort of like with what I mentioned with the ghost ship. Like it's in a place where with the Flying Dutchman, it's in a place where there probably are a lot of shipwrecks because it's a dangerous area of the world to sail in. So you're more likely to think that like something weird is going on. And if you have a lot of ships, you have all these shipwrecks, right? There's like 3 million of them that we think we know of. You know, and a lot of these ships are going out a long time ago and never coming back, and you never see them again. He's like, well, they must have, like, the monsters must have gotten them. So it's a convenient way to explain that away, basically.
Right.
So that's, you know, mythical sea monsters, sea serpents, and some explanations for why there might be stories about them or why we even have these depictions of them. But there are a lot of real spooky creatures in the oceans, and not just the whales, which I am shockingly afraid of now. There are also probably a lot that we haven't even discovered yet, because again, you know, you could fit friggin' Mount Everest in the trench and then some. And importantly, there are some specific mythical creatures or monsters that have real life counterparts or non-paranormal, strange explanations. So the first is we've got these stories of the Kraken, right? So the Kraken was said to live off the coasts of Norway and Greenland, and it had giant tentacles that could drag fishermen or even entire ships under the water. And apparently suddenly starting to catch a large number of fish was a sign that the Kraken was near, because it must have been scaring them to the surface. And I read that and I was like, I think that's sort of just like normal fish behavior when there's any predator nearby. It's like,
right.
Maybe it was just a whale again. The Kraken is also said to have created a huge whirlpool when it returned to the deep that would suck ships down. So in reality, I feel like this one isn't too surprising. I don't know how you feel, but in reality, the giant squid is probably the explanation.
Oh, yeah. That would be my guess.
Tales. Yeah. So their existence, the giant squid, was confirmed in 1857 by naturalist Japetus Steenstrup. It's a good name.
Oh, it's a great name.
Yes. And there are 21 different species of them. So I had no idea there were so many.
Me either.
But like with the whales having sex, it's also been argued that many sea monster sightings were actually sightings of giant squid.
Yeah, I mean,
so there you go.
It would be pretty terrifying to see a giant squid and have no clue what you were looking at.
Yeah. Although I think like the argument could definitely be swayed in whales' favor because like whales are frequently at the surface, whereas giant squid live like pretty deep down, I think.
Yeah.
Like it's super rare. So they're still really mysterious. And I say that, yeah, because they're still really mysterious. We only took pictures of an alive giant squid in 2004 or 2005. We didn't get the first one on video that was alive until 2013. So like I said, they mainly stay in really deep water because they're trying to avoid the whales. Whales are scary.
I'll say, who's the scary one now?
Here's the thing, you guys. I think whales are the scary ones in the ocean. So most of what we know about them is from dead ones that have washed ashore, and many size estimates that people have made are based on having to extrapolate the length of these incomplete specimens that have washed up on land, or they've had to use measurements of just their beak, which is like the, hard, it's their mouth, but it's the hard piece that they use to bite and eat prey, and their mantle, which is a portion of their body that sits above their head. So it's like the only non-squishy parts of them, basically. So from those measurements, the longest ever recorded was around 14.3 meters long, which is about 46 feet.
That is giant.
That's a big animal.
That is huge.
Yeah. And it means that it probably weighed around a ton. So like 2,000 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, like, that is terrifying if people...
Yeah.
Yeah, if you see one, that,
yeah,
I mean, that would scare the shit out of me knowing what it is, but like,
right,
not knowing.
Yeah, so they're really big. Like if anybody, I mean, here's the thing: it would have been rare, but like, let's say that like a couple groups of sailors in the 1700s or 1800s saw one of these at the surface, like you would 100% think that it was the Kraken.
Right.
So. It's likely that larger squids exist and we just haven't observed them.
I don't like that.
Yeah, I know. The proposed maximum length is around 27 meters, which is 88 feet. So like double the size of the biggest one that they have found. It's so big.
It's huge.
That said, they're really big. That's really freaky. I don't like to think about them being anywhere beneath me, although, I haven't swam above a trench before. But although they are quite large, they are not big enough to kill fishermen or drag down boats. But you could see how it would be really frightening to see one. I would be sort of freaked out if I saw one today.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah. And it's worth noting, so sperm whales are their natural predator. It's worth noting that they have seen a lot of sperm whales with big scars on them from encounters with giant squids. So there's like sperm whale giant squid battles happening beneath the ocean. And they're tearing each other up.
Great.
But, so it's freaky. Those are like real life monsters.
Sperm whales are pretty big.
Let's look up sperm whale size. Maximum length of 52 feet and a weight of 90,000 pounds. 40 metric tons. So they're a lot heavier. Like there's a lot more bulk to them.
You don't think a squid could take down a boat? I mean, I'm not talking a ship here. I'm talking like a boat.
Yeah, it's true. I said they're not big enough to kill a fisherman, but like probably they could kill a fisherman for sure.
And whether or not they would, I don't know. But like,
most of that length is not in their body. It's in like the super long bits that hang off of them. So like not even really their
yeah,
opposable parts, their tentacles or whatever. I don't know what.
Can you imagine those tentacles just reaching up over your boat?
Yeah, like I don't even know if that's like a possible thing.
Yeah, I don't
like
either.
If they have the muscle structure to be able to do that.
Yeah,
but if you are an expert in squids, you can tell us. Could they like reach up out of the water onto your boat
and grab me? That's what we need to know. All right, so that's the Kraken. And then there's also mermaids, which I don't think is all that scary.
Well, I think they're scary if you're not going with like the Disney version of mermaids.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, there are stories of like, well, there are lots of stories of like sirens and stuff like
that's
that,
fair.
like in Greek mythology. But like, they're mean. Like, they
that's
sound
fair.
really pretty, and like some of them are said to like be really beautiful, but then they like drag you down and kill you. So that's scary. I mean, that's
Yeah,
sort of
you're
like a
right.
monster.
You're right. I'm thinking Disney version. I've
You're
blocked
thinking
all
like Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
knows?
but
It
even
could
that
be
story, even that story not Disney-fied is very depressing.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Ultimately, it comes back to like, if there are actually mermaids, why aren't we seeing them? Like, what are they doing down there?
Yeah, I guess I picture like, let's say there are actual mermaids. Like, I would picture them looking more like the Harry Potter mermaids, where they're like a lot more fish-like, you know?
Yeah. All right. Okay, fine.
Anyway.
Mermaids are scary too.
They can be. They can be scary. Maybe there's nice ones out there. We don't know.
So, which I'm surprised it dates back this far, but stories about aquatic humans date back to 5000 BC. And that just, like I said, that surprises me that it goes back that far.
Yeah. Although, you know what? Okay, I'm bringing it back to whales again.
Name of the episode.
This isn't actually Spooky Oceans. This is just whales, the
This
episode.
is about whales.
But whales? Okay, I'm gonna... Okay, so I was just thinking, like, aquatic humans, mermaids, like, how ridiculous would it be if, you know, some primate species decided, like, I'm just gonna, like, go live in the water again, you know?
Yeah.
But then I was thinking, like, that's what whales did. Like, their ancestors, or, you know, the way back in the evolution-wise, were land animals who were like, no, fuck this shit. I'm going back to the ocean.
That's true.
Yeah. So it is a thing that has happened in the past. Like, I was going to say, well, it's ridiculous, but it is a thing. Like, I think there was like some like bear-like creature basically that decided like, no, I live in the water now. And then also whales, one of whales' closest animal relatives, cousins, I guess you could say, are hippos. So hippos are just land whales, and hippos are scary.
Hippos are adorable, but they're terrifying.
Yes. Okay, tell me more about mermaids, Paige.
I don't even remember. All right, so they date back to 5000 BC, and since then, many people have claimed to have seen them, including Turk on Scrubs.
Oh my god. I know what I saw, woman. That's one of my favorite Scrubs moments.
So funny. So one of the most notable sightings is when Christopher Columbus claims that he spotted 3 mermaids off of the coast of the Dominican Republic in 1493. And he specifically noted that they were uglier than the depictions of them that he had seen previously. Which, like, fucking mean.
But true. Like, Christopher Columbus was 100% hoping that he was going to get to fuck some mermaids. And then he was like, no, these are not great.
So what he and others were probably seeing were either manatees or dugongs, which I don't even think I know what like a dugong looks like.
They look like manatees.
Oh.
They're just like, they just live, I forget where they live, to be honest. But they're basically like, they look just like manatees, but they're slightly different species. Let's figure out where dugongs live.
But they're so cute.
I know. I love manatees and apparently dugongs as well. They're cousins. They share a similar plump appearance. but have a dolphin fluke-like tail. So they have a slightly different tail. Oh, and I think dugongs live in salt water.
It says that they live in the Red Sea and Indian Ocean.
Oh, and it looks like they live in Australia as well. They're so cute, though.
They are so cute.
But basically, like, the shape of it's like the shape of their tail and, like, the way that they move and stuff in the water, like, made people think they were seeing a mermaid tail. But then Christopher Columbus was like, I like the body, not the face.
Yeah, but like, fuck that guy, because manatees are adorable.
Yeah, he's just wrong. But also, I don't want to fuck a manatee.
Well, yeah. Fair. I'm not really out looking to fuck mermaids either, though, so.
Okay, but like, if there was a mermaid, and I mean like a Little Mermaid type mermaid, would you fuck a mermaid? Like, take out the like emotional part of it, take out the like, you know, you're married part.
I mean, I would have to fuck the mermaid.
An attractive merman, he seems like a cool guy. Are you gonna do it?
Is it bestiality if I fuck a mermaid? Because like, a part of me feels like I would have to fuck the mermaid, but the other part of me feels like that's like tiptoeing the line of like animal abuse. In which case I would not fuck the mermaid.
Okay, well, if he has like the mentality or like the mental capability of an animal, then yes, that's problematic. But if it's like mental capability of a human, I don't think it's bestiality.
Okay, then I'm probably in that scenario.
You're gonna do it?
I'm probably, well, yeah. Assuming the mermaid wants to fuck me, I'll fuck the mermaid. Consent is sexy.
I'm just saying, if the opportunity was presented and they were like, want to do this? You'd be like, yeah, I do.
I mean, you have to, right?
Yeah.
For science.
I mean, I do it. For science. Okay.
We've ended up in a couple really weird places tonight.
Oh, they're all staying in. This is just going to be the weird whale / mermaid episode.
Oh, golly. Okay. All right. So that's mermaids. There have also been other mistaken monster sightings, like flashes from large schools of fish that are potentially appearing like large animals.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah. Giant jellyfish.
Which I recently saw pictures of a jellyfish on like a TikTok video. I know you are shocked. That were like things that are bigger than you think they are. And it like shows the jellyfish and you're like, oh, that's just like a fucking jellyfish, whatever. And then it shows it next to a person and it's like 10 times the size of the person. It's huge.
But that's just like the big guys. Like there are smaller jellyfish.
But yeah, there are tons of like tiny little jellyfish.
Yeah.
But I'm saying like giant jellyfish exist. And like if I saw that and didn't know any better, yeah, like I could think that's some sort of weird monster. So
I mean, it is.
They are kind of monsters. They're like real life monsters.
Yeah, they're terrifying.
I bet whales eat them though.
Giant ones?
Whales do eat jellyfish, don't they? No, turtles eat jellyfish. Do whales eat jellyfish?
Leatherback turtles and ocean sunfish.
Oh, ooh, those are big.
Have long been known to gorge on jellyfish, gobbling hundreds of them every day.
What else, Paige?
All right. And then huge serpent-like oarfish.
Yeah, they basically look like sea monsters. They're huge and terrifying.
Yeah.
Well, so that is real animals that you should be afraid of. Or maybe not. We're not afraid of manatees. We just don't want to have sex with them like Christopher Columbus did. So a final note on this, which this is something I was thinking of when I was taking these notes. But I'm going to speculate wildly a little bit about sea monster sightings / sea monster encounters. And this will be similar to, you know, the things I talked about with like, is it more likely that, you know, people see ghost ships in places where there are a lot of shipwrecks? So I really wonder if rogue waves may have been responsible for some of the monster stories out there, and specifically stories like the Kraken, where it's like, it just, you know, enormous beast that like dragged the ship down and it disappeared, or like the, the whirlpool. So rogue waves were thought to be a myth until a sudden, and I mean like sudden, like out of nowhere, 84-foot wave was recorded on an oil drilling platform off the coast of Norway that was otherwise surrounded by 40-foot swells. So it's just like a random giant wave with like regular size waves, which like 40-foot waves are also really big, but like, it's not 84 feet. So there are stories, there's anecdotal evidence or observations from sailors suggesting that there have been rogue waves at heights of up to 133 feet. And there are a bunch of stories of encounters of ships with rogue waves. And one spooky thing that we haven't talked about yet that I'm like super duper looking forward to is talking about the disappearance of the Eileen Moore lighthouse keepers in the Flannan Isles.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the possibilities there is that the island got hit by like an enormous rogue wave and basically just like washed them all off the island, and that's why they're gone without a trace. So bringing this back to shipwrecks, I really want, and sea monsters, I really wonder if some of the stories of ships getting like, again, sucked down into the depths instantly by like some sort of enormous beast were because of rogue waves swallowing them up. Like if there was like another ship in the vicinity that didn't get hit by that wave, but like one of the other ships in their party just like disappeared because it did, you might be like, I think a monster just got them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. So that's my wild speculation for this episode. So, in summary, 3 million shipwrecks, the ocean's really big, giant weird sea creatures, huge waves that strike at random. The ocean is very spooky.
All right, everybody. Well, we took you through a really bizarre, long, winding path to get here, but that wraps up our episode on spooky oceans.
And by spooky oceans, we mean whales.
We mean whales. Tune in to episode 35 when we do our second short and spooky episode. If you liked this episode, hit subscribe and share with a friend. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at SpookySciPod, Facebook at Spooky Science Sisters, and at our website, SpookyScienceSisters.com. If you have any questions about previous topics or ideas for future episodes, email us at SpookyScienceSisters@gmail.com. As always, thank you for listening and stay spooky.
This podcast is a part of Straight Up Strange Productions. Discover more shows like this one at straightupstrange.com.